Welcome all, and get ready for a wild ride tonight. This is Brittany.
And Mr. Wills.
And we are Signals from Pittsburgh. So tonight, we're diving into a film that will blow you away in a unique blend of action, horror, drama, adrenaline, Train to Busan. So, Train to Busan is a Korean film directed by Yeon Sang-ho and was released in the summer of 2016. This was shortly before the animated prequel, Seoul Station, by the same director. Both are amazing. Seoul Station kind of takes place in the same universe as Train to Busan, but with a totally different story. It goes in a little bit of a different direction and follows some different characters, but still very good. Definitely recommend that as well. So I went into this movie for the first time knowing nothing about it, and it was kind of a leap of faith on my part when playing Netflix roulette. And we all know how that can go sometimes, but this movie blew me away. I was pleasantly surprised. It was an unexpected hit for me. How about you, Mr. Wills?
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think in a oversaturated genre of zombie outbreak movies, this movie stands heads above the rest. Train to Busan offers a fun and unique take on zombie genre. It's part comedy, part action film, it's part morality fable, and it's all suspense. It's once it starts, you kind of got a little bit of an intro just to build up the story, and then once the action goes, it's nonstop balls to the wall. It's a bullet train ride from beginning to end, which is appropriate that it takes place on a bullet train. This movie gives me all the feels. It's fucking makes you laugh, it makes you cry. So just grab your tissues and hop on and grab a ticket for the Train to Busan, baby. Yeah, Train to Busan. It's about a dad and an absentee father, pretty much, and his little girl. So Seik-woo, I believe, is the dad's name, and Suwon is the little girl, is the victim of a recent separation, it seems like. She stays at home with Granny, which is Seok-woo's mother, and he just is making a living for his daughter. We don't get really any backstory onto why they're separated, but we just know that he's part of a major company, and then we find out later he does trading for them, or stock managing, I believe, for this major corporation. So he's driven and he's a provider, but he's not really there. He's an absentee father. And Suwon's the little girl that portrays her. She's the cutest little actress ever. She's so good in the role. She makes the movie.
Yeah, and so I was really impressed by her because a lot of child actors they're just not that great. Like, they're all right. I mean, they do a better job than I would, but it sounds like, it sounds like a 40-year-old wrote lines for a kid. It doesn't sound like something a kid would actually say or how a kid would react or emotionally react. And so she does a really, really good job with that. And yeah, I was really impressed by her acting. And it's nice to see a child actor really knock it out of the park.
Yeah, she pulls it off. She makes you believe that she's a young girl, but that is very intelligent and observant of the world around her.
Mm-hmm.
And in spite of the sometimes cruelness and selfishness of the world throughout the film, she proceeds to be selfless, even in the eyes of danger. And at one point, to her father says, "You can't look out for people; it'll just get you killed." And that's kind of a theme in this movie too. It's kind of a class struggle story too, to where I have to look out for me so I can get to the top, and and I don't care if I have to step on people to do that. And it's very overt in some parts of the movie, which really it's some very jarring and disturbing parts, which we'll get into. But I just wanted to talk about some of the characters. So we talked about Seok-woo, Suwon, and then my favorite character, Sang-hwa, who is with his pregnant wife. I think it's Song Kyung. How would you
I have
pronounce
trouble
it?
with hers, but I think it's Sung Young.
Sung Young. I'm sorry, the
That's,
K is
I don't know.
silent.
I mean, that's how I'd say it.
Well,
That
that's
doesn't
fine.
mean
So
much.
I'll go with you. So Sung Young, his wife. So he's just this typical. everyday guy. He's literally the everyman.
Yeah. Well, in my notes, I wrote Sang-hwa, the buff husband.
He's buff, but he's not like egregiously buff. He's like
No.
real.
Yeah.
He's not like you know UFC fighter. He's just like a burly dude,
Yeah.
but also down to earth and like a real man's man. So he reminds me. He's kind of built like a Japanese pro wrestler. He reminds me
Yeah.
of a lot of the Japanese pro wrestlers from like New Japan. Specifically, he reminds me of Masato Tanaka, who's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. But and then later on at one point in the film, he kind of wraps his fist and looks like a Street Fighter slash pro wrestler. So it just feeds further to fuel my
Yeah.
comparison.
Yeah. So I actually looked more into him because we were talking about that. And like he's got to have some background in like, I don't know, wrestling or something. So he's a Korean American actor, and his American name is easier to say. In real life, it's Don Lee, but he's a mixed martial arts expert,
Mm-hmm.
and he actually trained a few notable UFC fighters in the U.S. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So he's a trained dude. He stays in shape, but he's a big beefy guy.
He's fit. Uh, but like I said, not like Pitbull strong. He doesn't look like he's just got real thick, real broad build to him. He's not
Yeah.
like very wafy or super cut. He's just not too massive, but he's centralized. He looks like
Yeah.
he would kick some ass in some bar fighting. So to know that he's a professional fighter, that makes complete sense.
I like that. Personally, I prefer it. So I think he's a buff, beefy husband.
He's
That's how I wrote my notes, and I'm
buff,
sticking with it.
buff, beefy husband. I
The
like
beef
that.
husband.
The beef house husband.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's that couple, the husband and wife, and
Yeah,
then there's Yan Suk, but we like to call him Yan Suk.
yeah. Jan sucks.
So
Evil prick.
yeah.
Yeah, he's the owner of a bullet train corporation, but not the one that they're on. And if you haven't gotten the premise of this film yet, just let me back up. So what happened is Sukwu, who's never there for Suyan, it's going to be her birthday. Um, and the only thing she wants to do for her birthday is go to see her mom. Being an absentee father, he's never there for her, so he sucks it up and proves that he's going to be a good dad and ride the train to Busan to go and see his ex-wife and drop off his daughter for her
Hmm.
birthday. So he's going to be a good dad, but he's accompanying to her, and these are all cast of characters on the train to Busan. And I mean, it's a bullet train, so it's like traveling at close to 200 miles per hour, which I've never been on a bullet train, but it sounds cool
No,
as
me
hell.
neither.
Also terrifying though.
Yeah, a little scary.
But back to yeah, so apparently there was another gentleman who's a businessman on his way to visit his mother. We find out later, and his name is Jan Suk, but we call him Jan Suk because he's evil. He's just an asshole. He steps on people throughout the film. He's like a
He runs
CEO.
some, yeah, he's higher up in a company, and him and Sok-woo have more in common at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, I
Not
think
the outright assholeness that Yeon Suk has, but they're both very kind of selfish and driven. I don't know, driven to work hard and make money, and you know, protect their own. So I feel like they start out with more in common with each other than how it ends. But
yeah, Jan Suk, I think, is a cautionary tale to Sukwu,
yeah,
Sukwu of who he could become if he doesn't change who he is. And I think that's pretty
yeah.
apparent to where he needs to wake up and look at the world around him and what he's missing out on, especially with his daughter. And Sang-hwa brings that up to him because he's got a child on the way. And at parts in the movie, he's just like, hey, you have to, you're going to, I understand you're on the grind for your child, but he's like, it happened so fast. She's already at the age, she's at, you can't miss it. So he kind of, you know,
Hmm. Yeah, he says being a dad requires sacrifices, but he also sympathizes with him a little bit in the sense that like when your children grow up, they'll have some appreciation for what you did, but you got to find some sort of balance, I think is what he's saying,
yeah,
between being there and having that connection emotionally with your children, and also being able to provide for them. So he's yeah. Songhwa's the best.
He is, and with watching recently Parasite, and to be fair, I've never
Yeah.
gotten into many Korean films, but it seems like they're all like they have some morality fables, but not over the head. Like I mean, they're overt in some instances, but they're especially with these two directors, especially with him, it's just like woven beautifully into the story. It's perfectly
Mhm.
fitting, but not. And I don't know if that's because I'm watching it as someone outside of the country. Maybe if I watched an American film like that, I'd be like, oh, it's over you're over the top. But I don't know. I really appreciate like
Yeah.
there's morality fables in a lot of these films, especially this one, which I really dug. It's like don't step on people. You don't know what's going to happen. Life's really short.
Yeah.
More characters. Jinhee, which is this. She's kind of the girl cheerleader. She's a girl cheerleader for a baseball team who her boyfriend or her wannabe boyfriend, she's
Yes.
aspiring to gain him as her boyfriend, Young Guk. He's seems like he's the captain or at least the person everybody loves of his baseball team. So there's an entire
Yeah.
baseball team of kids on this bullet train as well. And hopping right into the story, essentially the long and short of it is there's a girl who seems to be somewhat injured slash sick. She gets onto this bullet train, stows away on this bullet train along with a homeless gentleman who's
Mhm.
apparently hiding from something. And we see this girl, and they go to approach her and see if everything's all right. And she, in one of the most disgusting slash great transformations, it's not so much like the gore, it's just the sound design and
Yeah.
the
Sound
makeup.
effects are just spectacular. So nasty and appropriate for what's happening to their body.
Yeah, and she turns into a zombie and unfortunately bites one of the stewardess of the train, and we're off to the races.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And I think that's one of the first kind of like, I don't know if everybody finds it this way, but like darkly humorous things that happens in the movie. Because the stewardess like bursts into the first train after getting bitten with the girl still hanging off of her back, just like swinging her around, and nobody's taking action. They're just kind of like, what? What's going on?
Everybody was
So
minding their own business.
some of the way these things are shot or just little scenes or lines are really funny, and it's really welcome in such a intense movie to have those like moments, usually after something really intense, have like a quick one liner, like something kind of darkly funny happen. But
A moment of levity. Yeah,
yeah.
speaking of another funny scene, there's a scene where we're just gonna hop around a little bit here, but there is a scene where there is a huge zombie outbreak on the train, and they're trying to go from car to car. And Sangwa, and Sakyu are trying to rescue some people out of a car that's in between or on the other opposite side of a car full of zombies. So they
Yeah.
sneak through, and they realize
Young
that
Gook is there too. Young
Young
Gook.
Gook is Young Gook is accompanying them as well. So it's
Yeah.
the three of them. They're trying to sneak through these zombies, and he asks him for a cell phone, and he slides it across the floor and calls it, and it's got like this really crazy ringtone.
Yeah.
And they make their way to like a halfway point and kind of stop in a
Pick
bathroom
on him
just
a
to
little bit.
to take a break, and he just kind of like ribs him. He's like, what's the deal with your ringtone? And he's like, why is your ringtone so overtly annoying? And he's like, what's wrong with it, and how do I
He's like, I
change
don't
it?
know how to change it. I
So that
love
was
that. That's actually well, yeah, we'll jump around a little bit, but that's one of my favorite sequences in the movie is their fight to train car 13 to
yes.
save their people. They hide in that bathroom while they're waiting for the next tunnel, and they just kind of like bust each other's balls. And one of my favorite things is Sanghwa saying, "Did I look cool?" After like 5 minutes of like straight intensity, it's just a really funny and welcome moment in the movie before they finish their push to, saving their loved ones. But yeah, the pacing in this movie is great. I think pacing can be one of the hardest things to do in a movie, and I gotta say the pacing was perfect. I felt just stressed out enough before they gave me a breather.
Yeah, it's kind of a long runtime, not super long, but I think it's
Hmm.
about 2 hours, and,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like 2 hours, just the way the momentum and being on the train and the developing story.
Yeah.
There's a couple scenes I really dug from the film where, in the very beginning, before the opening credits, really, there was a scene where a man just plows over a deer, and yeah, obviously you think, oh no, roadkill, and we see roadkill in some movies at the beginning, to start, or some things get hit by a car in the beginning of some films to start, but nothing like this. He plows over the deer, and then we just see the deer reanimate with the disgusting bone cracking sound,
Mm,
and like the filmed over eyes, like the milky white, dead-eyed eyes, and then this
yeah.
comes back to life. And I think that was like one of the creepiest scenes. I really love that.
Yeah, the way the deer contorts itself back and tries to get up and ugh. Yeah, but I think that's an interesting thing that they added because they imply it right away that it affects humans and animals alike. So the being able to spread is going to be just out of control, which we see obviously is spread so quickly and so violently. But
Yeah, once the affirmation woman gets on the train and bites the stewardess, it spreads through the cars pretty quick, and our here all of our primary characters try to move into a single car away from everyone, and
mhm.
we obviously there's carnage that ensues. Unfortunately, the baseball team gets dismantled at one
Yep.
point. Uh, One of my favorite scenes in the movie is they're deciding they're going to, well, early on in the film, they're running from the initial horde. Sang-hwa and his wife are just running, and then you see they really get introduced to Sukyu, and he shuts the door to keep out the horde, but obviously they're trapped in there, and they're about to make it, and he just kind of shuts the door before they can make it, and he's like, "What the fuck? Let us in." So he lets him in. And he's like, he
Yeah.
calls him an asshole and says like, "What the hell's
Yeah.
wrong with you?" And proceeds to call him an asshole through the rest of the movie. At some
Yep.
point, it becomes a loving.
At some point, he says something like to his daughter, and his daughter's like, "Well, you're not wrong."
Yeah, yeah. He calls her dad a bloodsucker because he finds out what he does for a living, that he works in
Yeah.
investments for a corporation. He says that
Yeah, she's
makes
like,
sense.
you're just saying what everyone's thinking.
Yeah. So,
So yeah, everybody knows that he's kind of a leech.
but I feel bad for him because I think he is really, when you're in that kind of lifestyle, especially in a business driven world, you have to commit your life to your craft. So I do feel
Hmm.
sympathy. He's not unsympathetic. Um,
No.
no, but like Yon Suk, I think that guy. He just very early on, he's an asshole. He said, he doesn't want to help anyone. He's only looking out for himself.
Yep.
There is, like I said, like we reiterated. If you want to go into it a little bit, we find out at one point they get off the train. They stop because there's going to be military envoy that's going to come in and help. So they stop at a station
Yeah, they stop
to
at Dijon.
at Daejeon to get help from the military. So,
Hmm.
and at this point, Sugyu and Suwon have it out. He called somebody back at the corporate office and said, had him get an escort out there to a safe
Yeah,
zone.
he gets kind of a inside information, and he's going to break away from the group, and so continuing his kind of like everyone man for themselves sort of thing. He's like, I'm going to go with my daughter off this way, and I'm not going to tell anybody else about this. I'm
Yeah,
just going to go.
being the savvy businessman looking out for number one, he sets
Hmm.
it up to where he's going to get his own personal military escort. And then the homeless man who stowed on the train earlier in the film
Yeah,
sees
he
what's going
overheard the
on.
phone call.
Yeah, he was in the car when he was making the phone call, so he overheard and he followed them. And then we come to realize in a awesome shot that all the military has been overrun and they all have the zombie disease. So even the secret hallway he went down, that guy is affected. But then we cut to the steps where the rest of the military is stationed to help these people, and then they're just all zombies and they're just ravenously attacking the people. And I think it's one of the coolest sequences ever, is when they're coming down the escalators and the stairs,
Yeah.
and
The reveal.
the reveal of the military, and then they're rushing up toward them and like a giant horde. And I thought I thought the special effects were cool. That was my beef with World War Z. Like I thought World War Z.
Oh, most of the zombies were CG.
Well, not even the CG, but
Or
they just made them look like a mass and not individual people. You know, it
yeah.
just seemed like it was like a blob. To where in Train to Busan, I feel like even though they are a mass like of inhumanity in this sense, they still have, you can still see the animation of each individual zombie, and
Yeah.
they
Yep.
don't look like just some CG blob.
Right. Yep. I agree completely. So everybody's rushing back. They're like, oh, holy shit, let's get back on the train. Let's go. Again, Suk-woo kind of sticking with his obliviousness, after his daughter she loses her last shred of kind of respect for him when they go off to the side. She's like,
Yeah,
what about everybody else? And just starts crying. And he's like, we got to look out for us. And she kind of loses, that's like the last of her respect for him at that point. She's just like, you're horrible. So being the guy that he is, he starts just walking away without her.
right.
And once all hell breaks loose, I think that's maybe one of the first turning points for him, when he realizes, like, shit, I'm about to lose my daughter right this second because I walked away from her, at the last moment. The couple, our favorite guy, Sang-hwa and Sung, swoop in and save the little girl. Swoop in really cool, like, too. He elbows that zombie right in the face and saves her. It's
Yeah,
really awesome.
I will say his method of fighting zombies may not be the best because it's punching and elbowing them, which is very susceptible to getting
Yes.
scratched or bitten, but it seems to work for him. So yeah, he when he
Yeah.
sucker punches a zombie and scoops her up, it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
great. And then you
Yeah.
see then you see Sikwu try to escape and head back to the train to get away from the military horde, and he
Mm-hmm.
gets incapacitated by a zombie, but then Sang-hwa kind of saves him, even though he thought he was an asshole. He knew, he's not
Yeah, I
inhuman. He
mean,
doesn't look
yeah,
out
he
just for him.
doesn't shut the door on his face. He waits and encourages him to come over, and he holds the door open for him until pretty much the last possible second,
Right.
unlike what Suk-woo did to him at the beginning. But yeah, and even the homeless guy tries to help him out, because the homeless guy runs by when he's getting attacked and throws his jacket on top of him. So
Yeah, throws his jacket on top of a Zed.
throw him a bone, like, this is your chance. And he's, so everybody's still trying to help him out, even though he's never done the same for them yet. So
Yeah, I think this is the point where he realizes that he's got to change his ways, or
yeah.
he starts to. There was a scene earlier in the film where there's two sisters, there are two elderly sisters traveling together, and they're the golden girls of our movie here, and they're really sweet and funny. Just two old ladies, and it's when these zombies initially rush the cars, and they're all waiting in this train car, and they don't have a place to sit, and Suan is sitting in a seat, and she gets up and offers her seat to the older woman, and
Mhm.
her dad pulls her aside and says, "It's dangerous. You have to look out for yourself now." And he said,
Mhm.
"Especially in this world." And she reminds him, she's like, "Well, Granny always said her knees hurt." And it's his daughter re-educating him on how to be humanist and how
Yeah.
to, especially in the face of the zombie apocalypse or any kind of apocalypse for that matter. It's a young child who is so wise beyond her years. She just understands how you're supposed to treat people, and how
Yeah.
that relates to the world that we live in. So I really love that scene too. I thought that was it really drove home the point and kind of made him reflect more on himself. So I thought that was
Yeah.
really cool. I want to talk about Yon Suk. This guy is he's like the quintessential evil prick, head of a corporation. He doesn't give a shit about anybody. They get back on the train, but they get separated. And like I said, there's one of the elderly sisters, Sang-hwa's pregnant wife, and also Suan all get stuck in a bathroom like a bathroom, a
Yeah,
water
the homeless
closet.
guy's there too. I don't think he ever gets a name. I think he's just called the stowaway.
Yeah, the stowaway homeless guy.
Yeah, which is like has double meanings, I think. Because I know there's a huge homelessness problem in South Korea, but to not even give him a name in the movie too is kind of transcends that too. That
That's a great.
makes a point, I think.
That's a great point. I didn't really put two and two together like that, but that's a really good point. Yeah, he's just kind of there, and he's just, whatever, he's just background. He's just in the background till, a lot of the people,
Hmm.
but not Suwon. She cares for everyone. But
Yeah.
so they're kind of trapped in this bathroom, and we were alluding to it before. There's the scene where they have to go make it back to car 13. You said this was one of your favorite scenes, so if you wanted to,
Oh yeah, the fight to train car 13.
yes,
Um they yeah, so they have this conversation, they're separated. I think Sunghwa gets a quick phone call about where they are so they can find out um where they're stowed away. And so they realize they're in train car 13. They all kind of realize that we need to go save them. And it's kind of against what um, Sukwu always kind of lived by, all for yourself. But when it's your own daughter, all of a sudden it's a different story. So they realize he's changing. He realizes he has to work together and help people. And so they try and figure out how they're gonna get all the way back there. And I just love the cuts of them like kind of gearing up. They're wrapping their arms in like tape and all this crazy stuff so that they can hopefully not get bit as easily. And
yeah,
they have this little montage where they gear up and they start heading back to train car 13.
and it's kind of reminiscent of Old Boy at some parts where he's
Mm-hmm.
fighting. They have to be very careful and stealthy when they're getting through the trains because they're just inundated with zombies. And then at this point, they go through a tunnel and they realize the zombies' vision is kind of based on light. They're kind of blind in the dark. So they use that to their advantage. And as we alluded to before, he takes his cell phone and slides it across and distracts the zombies. They're able to get to the train car, get everybody free, and head back. And as they're heading back to the main cart with our evil prick Jan Suk, he refuses. He grabs the cab or one of the workers from the train car and tells them, "Don't let him in." He refuses. He said they could be bitten.
Mm-hmm.
He
Yeah.
makes a point earlier when they're on the phone that they're idiots to go get them, and if they go get them, he's not going to let them in. I believe. So
Yeah.
when
He
they
kind of uses fear to control that whole train car into locking the door on them.
Yeah, so when they're coming back, they finally make it through the horde. They're trying to get back to the train car. Yeah, and he locks them out
Mhm.
essentially. And
Yeah, I thought it was just kind of like a full circle. Suk Woo's on the other end of a door getting shut on his face now.
he's realizing, yeah, if this is, this is the sword you live and die by if you're going to be a selfish prick and on the lookout for yourself, you
Yeah,
know, this is what it requires. It requires you hurting innocent people, possibly killing them. So they're trying to bust through. They're holding the door. So Sukwu and Sanghwa are holding the door to stop the zombies from busting in on the other end of the train car, where they're pleading for the other car to let them in, but they're saying no. So finally, they bust open the glass. Um, After Sanghwa sacrifices himself, he gets bit
mhm,
from. He's
yeah,
fighting back and holding back an entire horde of zombies. Unfortunately, gets bit. He knows he's going to die, so he holds back the door and lets them escape. They bust through, and everybody just said, they shut the main car in time to stop the horde. Yeah, everybody at that point just says, we don't want you here. They're convinced by Unsuck that they don't belong there. Like they're infected, and we don't want
yeah.
you. We don't
Everybody
feel
wants him
safe.
out.
So they exile. So yeah, Jinhee, Young Guk, Jinhee, I believe, was also trapped with them. So yeah, Jinhee was also trapped with them. So they were making their way back to the train car, and Young Guk realizes that, you know, I gotta be careful because I guess the girl that played Ginny too. She was a K-pop star, which I didn't realize.
Yeah.
So
I knew
he's like,
I don't know what band, but
yeah,
I knew she was famous for something else.
the band was Wonder Girls, I believe.
Okay. Oh, Wonder Girls.
So yeah, I don't. That doesn't have any bearing on me. But maybe he smartened up and realized I have one of the Wonder Girls. Maybe I should.
Yeah,
Zombie
maybe
apocalypse.
maybe I should take advantage of this.
I should just roll with the punches here.
Yeah,
So
let's roll with it. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, they get exiled to the train car ahead, which I thought was a stupid idea.
it
But
was. eh,
and we also lost one of the old elderly sisters.
Yeah, before that happens, one of the elderly
Yeah,
sisters
she
that saved, she
decides not to come
sacrificed.
in. Yeah,
Yeah,
she just sacrifices herself. Yeah.
she slows down the horde so they can make it in. And her sister, sitting in the safe car, witnesses this. So
Hmm.
as our group is being exiled to their own car ahead of the safe car, she watches her sister get killed and then sees her as a zombie. And then one of my
Yeah.
favorite scenes of the entire film
Yes.
says, like, look what you did. You helped all these people and they got you killed. And then, I want to just drive home the point of the entire car kind of turns on our survivors, our heroes. They're like, yeah, we don't want you here, and like exiles them and treat them like they're trash.
Yeah.
And
They're
clearly they're
kind of
not.
fighting amongst themselves.
Yeah, just treat them like secondary citizens and, he, say, oh, they could be bitten, they could be carrying the disease. And it's clear that they're not. So, but once they get exiled, this woman kind of has a mental breakdown as seeing her sister as a zombie and opens up the car and just kind of lets everybody get flooded. So you think, oh, great.
My other favorite line in the movie is her last line. She kind of sees what's going on in the train car. Everybody's turning against each other, and her sister just died, and she's just like, I'm done. I'm checking out. This is it." And her last line is, she just turns and looks at everybody, and she says, "What a load of shit," and opens the door. It's so good. I love it. It's one of my favorite lines.
That is an amazing line. And
So yeah,
and
she lets them all in.
she lets them in, and then we get a quick montage of people getting mauled. And initially I was cheering because I was like, "Oh, good, Jan Suk is dead." But then we find out later that he and one of the workers, the train worker that backed up all his arrogant asshole decisions, have survived by ducking into a bathroom car,
Yeah.
or bathroom closet, essentially.
Yeah.
So they have survived for now.
Well, we knew they survived because he was such an evil character. We kind of assumed that like they wouldn't just let him die, arbitrarily without showing it. That's not satisfying in a movie or storytelling entertainment sense. Like,
He's he's not
yeah.
gonna he's not gonna die off screen. If someone dies off
No.
screen in a horror movie, that means they'll be back. Or if we don't
Yeah.
if someone doesn't open a door and find their body, they will be back.
Yep.
So no one
Yep.
dies off screen. So
Exactly.
I I wanted to go back for a second. There was a very poignant scene early on in the film, that shows kind of the disconnection between Sukwu and his daughter, Suan. It's her birthday, so that's why they're on the train car. He's been absentee father for her,
Oh
and
yeah, that's right. Worst birthday ever.
worst birthday ever. So she gets a zombie plague, and he doesn't know
She's
what.
like, buy me 3 Wii's because I'd prefer that over whatever's happening right now.
Right? Yeah, yeah. He buys her a Wii that she already had. I think it's one of the saddest scenes of the entire movie. Before any of the zombie outbreak, he comes home. He asks like one of his coworkers, like, "Hey, what do kids like?" So he buys her a Wii, and then he had just bought her one for Children's Day, which I imagine is probably akin to Christmas. But he's like, "Yeah," she's like,
Yeah.
"You bought me one for Child's Day." So not only did he forgot that he bought her one, like he's so absentee and so unaware of her life that he doesn't even go to her room and see what she has. Like it's very sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very sad, like touching scene,
It's
and
It is, yeah, and I was very impressed with how it's done because it's a perfect example of showing, not telling in a way, because they don't really exchange any words other than the Children's Day thing. She just kind of opens a gift, looks at it, looks over at her other week, looks back at it with just the saddest face. Like, I don't know, the acting and the visuals kind of tell it all right there. It was a really sad scene. You really
Yeah,
feel for her.
I love that little girl. She's so cute, and she's such a great actor, and it's like she can just really wrench at your heartstrings when you're watching
Mm.
her. So
Oh, she does.
she was really good. But at this point in the film now, he's redeeming himself after Sang-hwa sacrifices himself. He promises to get his wife out of there and protect his unborn child. So they've kind of, even though initially when they met he thought he was an asshole, they bonded a friendship. So after we go back to our favorite asshole, Yan Suk. He's in the bathroom car with the train attendant, and he looks out. He peeks out to see if there's still zombies. There are, and then the
Yeah.
train attendant
Well,
asks him if it's clear, and he said yes. And so he goes out, letting the poor guy get attacked and murdered, and pushes him out of the way so he can sneak
yeah.
off of
So
the
he can
train.
sneak out. Yeah, because at this point, like, there's some blockage on the tracks, and the train conductor, which he's like doing the best he can this whole time up front, only kind of hearing what's going on the train. Um, yeah, he had to stop the train, and because there's a blockage, and he tells anybody who's left alive, he's like, "Oh, if you wanna, I'm gonna run over like to the last track on the end and hop on a new train. Get there if you can. I'll meet you there."
Earlier in the film, they find out that they after the military thing went awry, that they made the plan, and with insider information that Sugwoo had gotten, that Busan had not been quarantined, had not been sieged yet, so it was safe. If they could make it to Busan, they could get to safety and not have to worry about being quarantined with the zombies or being trapped
Yeah.
in the city. So that was the whole plan. With the train being blocked, the conductor had to find a new train to transfer everyone else. So everybody gets off the train. He finds a new train, and once again, there's another scene where they find a new train. But well, in the meantime, actually, Young Guk and Jin Hee are trying to escape everybody's trying to escape the zombies. There's a giant flaming train that shows up that wrecks. So there's, we have Suwon and Saku and the pregnant lady. They're all trapped with the homeless man under the train that is about to crush them. It's on fire. It's full of zombies, and they're about to get crushed. And then the side,
Trifecta of just total bad luck.
yeah, chaos. And happening simultaneously is are Jinhee and Young-guk trying to escape. And
Yeah.
what happens is he comes at fucking that the asshole
Yan Suk.
Yansuk. He runs into them. He's getting chased by zombies, and he
Yeah.
literally
Throws her right in
pushes
the way. Yeah.
pushes Jinhee in the way and lets her get bitten and like runs away. Like he's
Yep.
like a murderer at this
He
point,
is.
and
Yeah.
he's a fucking asshole. And then
Yeah.
she gets chomped on,
Yeah. And
and yeah,
her poor man, he's just like, oh, he's just heartbroken. I mean, he knows she's bit, and he kind of just he stays with her and kind of comforts her while she dies, knowing that, just kind of accepting that she's going to bite him immediately.
yeah, she kills him immediately, and
Yeah. So he kills
and
so many people in the course of like seconds.
yeah, what an asshole. It
Kills
was
one, two, three, maybe four
yeah
coming up.
and then it was kind of reminiscent of Return of the Living Dead. He's just like, I just want to eat your brains, baby.
Yeah.
But a
Yep.
little more instantaneous,
Yep.
less funny, more heart wrenching. But I
Yes.
remember Return of the Living Dead. Um, so our heroes escape the train car. The homeless man makes the ultimate sacrifice to kind of hold everything back. He dies. The poor guy doesn't get a
Oh,
name, and he dies the most violent death. It's not
yep.
really shown, but he's trapped under a flaming train car, crushed and getting eaten by zombies while it
Yeah.
explodes.
Yeah.
It's
Just
like,
not a good day. He couldn't get the fast way out. He had to get he started getting eaten. And then you get like caught on fire and crushed. But I mean, ultimate sacrifice.
That's got it. That I do not want to go that way.
No.
Yeah, Yeon-suk finds the conductor,
Mm-hmm.
and
and this conductor's like, oh my god, a survivor.
yeah,
I need to go help him. So another good guy, he's like, I'm gonna go help him.
Yeah, he sees the conductor. He goes to help him. I'm sorry, conductor sees Young-suk. He goes to help him. He runs out onto the track. Young-suk actually gets bitten and trips the conductor and throws him into the zombie, and the fucking conductor
pushes him
bites
down
him.
and throws him into the horde. This poor conductor is just another good guy trying to help fellow man out here, and he helped the wrong guy.
and
at that point the audience knows too. It's just everybody who's watching the movie at that point is like, no, don't help that guy. Like yelling at the screen, like, just stay on the train, but no.
Yeah, no, he's an awful asshole. So that our survivors, so it's just being Seokgu, Suwon, and Sang Young, which is the pregnant woman. They make it to the train car to go to Busan, but also we have Yeon-suk on there as well. It's revealed that he has been bitten.
Yeah.
And he bites Seokgu on the hand.
Yeah, they fight, and I guess a little thing to note too here is the only time Yeon-suk shows humanity is after it's pointed out that he's bitten and doomed, and he kind of freaks out and has a very human reaction finally. I'm still in a selfish way, like, help me see my mom again, but it's the only time you see him have any kind of human emotion really in the movie, other than being just like a shitbag the whole movie. He's just like, my mom, and he's like crying. He just wants to see his mom again.
But he's still being selfish.
Oh yeah, still being selfish. Like, help me get there, guys. Like, will you help me? But no, and then he goes full zombie mode after that little breakdown. But yeah, they fight, and Seokgu gets bit in the hand.
And one of the saddest moments, because then you realize, he can have his redemption, because he grabs Yeon-suk. He like wraps himself in a chain in a cool way, and like grabs him and throws him off the train, but survives, and then pulls himself back up. But then it's revealed, that he's been bitten and he's going to turn. And there's a scene early on in the movie where he misses Suwon's recital, and she's singing Aloha We, which is that old Hawaiian song, like Aloha. Yeah, but she like gets stage fright, and she's really upset her dad isn't there to witness.
Yeah, she's too like nervous to sing without her dad there to support her.
Yeah, he had Granny record it for him, so he watched it, and he let her know early in the movie in the car that even though he wasn't there, he's always watching her, so he sees everything she does. And it was like a sweet moment, like, I do care about you, and you should continue. You should always sing. And he's like, you shouldn't give up. You shouldn't have stage fright. And it showed early on in the film that he did love his daughter. He was just sacrificing everything he did. And it was a callback to this scene where he gave the ultimate sacrifice, and in like the most heart wrenching scene in the entire movie.
So sad.
She says, he says, I have to go because he has to protect her, and she like screams, she like cries, and it's like the most heartbreaking, because this little girl, she's like really crying, like her dad, like he's really, she's such a good actor.
And I know, and like it's very ironic in such a sad, horrible movie like way, like this is finally he's at the point where he's like, if he could choose to stay with her over choosing to do anything else, he would. But now it's out of his hands. Like he has to leave this one last time. He can't stay with her because he's gonna turn. And it's just really sad, because all the time that he had a choice to spend time with her and he didn't, and now he wants to and he can't.
And the ironic twist is you find out there's a scene in the car where he's calling his inside man at the corporation, is that the corporation he was working for is the one responsible for the outbreak, which is even
Yeah.
like
He like pulled funding from the company, and at the beginning of the movie, and the guy he's talking to is like, is this our fault? We like pulled money, and they, is this our fault because we
yeah.
pulled out? And he kind of absolves the other guy of feeling guilty, I guess. He's like, please tell me it's not my fault. And he's like, it's not your fault.
But yeah,
So even though it kind of is their fault, but he kind of gives them the, I guess, peace of mind because his friend's having a breakdown.
you don't want to tell somebody it's their fault, even though
No,
it's not your fault.
even though it is kind of their fault.
It's totally his fault.
But
he's got to live with the fact, that's another. I think once he realizes that, and he realizes the fact of even just trying to survive and not necessarily being a bad person, but being a capitalist, sometimes it's just inherently evil. To put profits in front of people, it's inherently evil. And though he saw it as being altruistic and helping his family, ultimately in a kind of cursed way, unfortunately, he learned his lesson a little too late.
yeah.
But in the end, he saves his daughter not once but twice, because the train pulls into a empty like railway, and there's a tunnel. So naturally, her and the pregnant woman walk through the tunnel, and on the opposite end, there's a army installation. It's a demilitarized zone, and there's a sniper there, and he's got them in his sights, and he calls back to, his commanding officer, hey, I see two coming through the tunnel. And he says, should I shoot, or, what's going on? He's like, can you confirm they're unharmed? He's like, I can't. He's like, yeah, go ahead and shoot. And then you hear Suan sing Aloha, and like bawling. And that's another thing, when her dad was, in the scene before exits the train car and waits on the outside until he turns, and he has a flashback of her as a little girl, and has like a kind of a moderately peaceful.
He's like the only one who dies with a smile on his face. He has enough time to feel kind of absolved, feels like he did the right thing finally, and he has enough time to kind of sit there and think of the happiest moment right before his last moments, which is like his daughter being born. So he dies with a smile on his face, making sure to save everybody. So
and then he just planks onto the
trust falls onto the rocks.
He just trust falls right onto the train tracks, and dies. But
she kind of saves them by singing that song out loud, even though she said she wouldn't sing it without her dad there. I don't know, I think maybe it's like a kind of an ode to her dad, like he sacrificed himself, and she's just completely upset and sad, and sings the song for him even though he's not there. And that's what saves them, because she starts singing, and they hear it, and they don't shoot.
Once they hear the singing, they decide not to shoot, and that's ultimately, like you said, it's what saves them. And I think, to me, it's a moment where that she has to believe that maybe her dad will see her in the afterlife, because like he said before, I'm always watching you. He didn't let her know it was through a camcorder, so I imagine.
Oh yeah, no, she gives that look too, like when a kid gives you, they're like, what, really, how'd you know that? It's crazy.
Right. So I kind of thought it was a cute callback that he'll always be watching over her, even though he had to sacrifice himself, that he'll always be there for her, like in an omnipotent way, which I thought was kind of a cool little nod to the beginning of the film. I love the ending. I thought the movie was great. What did you think overall? What were some of the other aspects of the film? We kind of unpacked the entire movie, but what was some of the other aspects you liked?
Overall I loved it. There's a lot of intensity to it, mixed with kind of some over the top moments that weren't corny. They did a good job with that. I liked some of the darker humor and just the humor interspersed in within. I think it's one of the more well done, like, zombie virus outbreak sort of movies. I got the feeling that watching it, it wasn't, the way it was shot and edited wasn't as chaotic as what you see a lot in American movies when it comes to like outbreak, like zombies or like virus outbreak sort of
Right.
pandemic
It's like
movies.
immediately the streets are swarmed with zombies and
Yeah.
everything.
Well,
And
more,
it was
yeah, there's not like a lot of shaky cam. There's not a lot of crazy cuts to where you can't really tell what's going on. Everything's very deliberate. And I noticed that there wasn't a lot of like fill or cover shots, like in most movies you would shoot like close up of hands or feet or, close up of the person's face, just so that if you decide later you want to cover up something or cut away, you have all this extra footage laying around. But I didn't get the sense that they did a whole lot of that. It just seemed very planned out and very intentional the way it was shot and edited. And I think that comes from him being heavily involved in animation. And if you watch a lot of anime or animated movies, you'll hear this a lot from the directors of those movies, where they tend to be better in general with getting their footage and editing than people who have only done live action video production or cinematography. Because when you're working with animation, you don't want a single frame, if you can help it, of extra animation time put into that thing. So you really have to storyboard better, and you really have to think about your cuts better. You don't ever fill things in for the sake of filling things in, because somebody has to draw and animate anything you need. So it's easier when you're filming a movie to get those fill-in shots. But I just noticed that there wasn't a whole lot of that in this movie, and I have a feeling it's because he comes from an animation background. There's also a really interesting interview with him on nofilmschool.com. If you want to look it up, he talks a little bit more about that. But
yeah, I would say so. I would say having an artist or any kind of animator involved in the production, I think, yeah, it was more concise. It would seem like there wasn't a wasted frame, and there was a
mm-hmm,
lot more, even though there were a lot of characters with some zombie films, with most zombie films, not particularly the Romero ones, because Romero, he's the king of the zombies. He writes for character, but there's a lot of zombie movies that don't write for character, and everybody's kind of expendable, kind of like a slasher movie. But each of these
yeah,
characters had a story arc, which even if it was a short one or a small one, and we're only with them for like a snapshot of time, I agree
yeah,
with you. And you saying that he comes back from an animation background, that makes sense because
yeah, because they can't afford to waste a single frame if they can help it. So yeah.
there's no B-roll in animation.
No,
so
not normally.
so
So I think that was great. I think that translated over really well, and I noticed it during the movie, and then I read the interview later, and he kind of mentioned a little bit of that. So
that's some cool insight. Wouldn't have thought of that, but I see it now, and that's really cool. And I think that helps the pacing, and that makes you better,
mhm.
and that makes your editor's job easier too, because there's less, everything's so tight, and
Yeah,
as long as you get the shots which they did, and I thought the look of the zombies in this movie was great. I thought, and I looked at him up. He's in his 40s, so it would make sense. It has like a Resident Evil vibe to it. Some of the scenes, especially like with the girl getting attacked on the train by the first zombie,
yeah.
or
There's
the
like a
girl real.
medium or close up of her face, like from the side, kind of
Yeah,
turning, and
it's
yeah, that's definitely reminiscent of the first reveal in Resident Evil.
yeah. So totally saw Resident Evil nod, and they're talking about doing Resident Evil movies. And I know you said you didn't want to see this guy get shoehorned into that, but I would love to see him do something Resident Evil related because I think he would nail it. I think if you told me this was a Resident Evil movie, I would have bought it. And no knock on the Mia Jovovich movies. Mia Jovovich is great, but yeah,
Yeah.
I could totally buy this in the Resident Evil
This is
universe. Like,
more of a pace that I would like to see with Resident Evil stuff, but
yeah, but I dug it. I thought
Yeah.
this was the most exciting zombie movie I've watched since Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead held the high water mark for a long time. Shaun of the Dead revived zombie culture, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And then,
Yeah.
there were some good things that came out. I mean, there's still good zombie movies out there, but I don't think any of them touched like storytelling, cinematography, special effects, vibe, just a great overall morality tale about how we
Yeah.
should treat each other better, especially in the wake of a pandemic. And I think that we're living in a pandemic now. I'm glad I kind of waited to watch this film because I can relate to it more now because everybody's kind of isolated from each other. And
Yeah.
I hope when everything blows over that, we learn, the majority of people learn and we treat each other a little better.
I
So
hope so. I hope so too. Get back to a not normal, but a new normal, hopefully a better normal. So
a better
we'll
normal,
see.
yes. Yeah. But yeah, I love this movie. I excited for the sequel. We'll have to check out his other films, and we did watch Soul Station as well. It was cool in its own right, but I think it has its own vibe to it. So
Yeah, it's a bit different, and I really liked Soul Station for its own reasons. The story is very different. It focuses on a small cast of characters. There's definitely some twists and turns. It doesn't
yeah,
go quite where I expected it to go, but I loved the way it ended. I had some issues with the animation at first, but I got used to it very quickly. And it ended up being a really good experience. I'm really glad I watched it all the way through. I'm actually like, the more I look into him, the more I hear similar things about his early animated movies. A lot of people say they start out not being sure about them, and then by the end, the story or the lessons from the story hit really hard. So it makes me want to go back and watch his other things too. So
definitely gonna check out more of his other work. I would recommend this movie to anyone who loves South Korean cinema, zombie movies, or just like good morality tales, which it
yeah,
sounds weird to say, but it's a really cool movie about how kind of not quite Snowpiercer, but similar. It had like a similar vibe to
mm,
Snowpiercer as well. But I really I really loved it. It's gonna be probably in my top 20 now. I would definitely watch this again,
yeah,
and I'm looking forward to the sequel.
me too.
I'm not crying. You're crying. Hawaiian music shouldn't be allowed to be that sad ever. So only 2.5 people survived the entire train to Busan and were saved by Suan singing. If you don't get a little misty from watching her sing, you might want to check your pulse because I think you're a zombie. Very emotional ending to such a satisfying movie. God, so sad, but yet so satisfying.
I know, right? A zombie movie has no right to hit me in the heart so hard. I definitely teared up the first time I saw this, and I teared up again when we watched it. But Train to Busan, the combination of action, horror, the visuals were amazing, those emotional beats, and some much needed comic relief here and there. There's some really good spots there that made me laugh. A little bit of dark humor, which is my favorite. But it all comes together in such an immersive way. It was a very impressive film. I really do think it's one of the best zombie movies I've experienced in recent years, especially, like you said, Will, and kind of an oversaturated genre at this point. It was definitely very fresh, I'd say. But Yan Sang-ho and his crew completely nailed the characters and their arcs. The pacing was amazing. I didn't feel bored at any point in this film. I actually kind of felt myself wanting more. I wanted it to be longer. I didn't want it to end. But I recommend this one to anyone who loves horror, action, zombies, all that good stuff. Or if you just want a film that's gonna kick your emotions right in the ass.
I agree. This comes highly recommended by both of us here at Signals from Pittsburgh. And one thing I enjoy is not so much basic storyline, but fitting storylines. Everybody had their own arc and they came to a natural conclusion. And it was nice to see that. It's better to see something like that where people have an arc in a zombie movie than survivors meet, survivor gets bit, they wait for survivor to turn, shoot survivor in head, you know. In this movie, you had some emotional attachment to the characters, like Beefy Husband. When he got bit, I was completely like devastated because he was my favorite character, and it was just as impactful as when Roger gets bit in Dawn of the Dead. Like, I cared about that character. I didn't want that character to die, as opposed to watching, you know, a run-of-the-mill zombie movie where it's like, oh, okay, now the redneck guy's gonna die. Now the African-American guy's gonna die. Now the Asian guy's gonna die. Now the woman's gonna die. Like, it's, you know, I thought his character development, as quick as it was very good. You knew who the characters were, you cared about them, and you wanted to see them survive. That's what makes this movie rewatchable to me. You know, a common pitfall of zombie movies is that you just don't care about the paint by number characters, but this movie had characters with heart and with depth. And if you haven't seen this movie, you guys get out there and watch it. I sat on this movie for too long, and I regret that, but I love it.
Well, there you have it, folks. If you haven't seen this one, then hop on the train and take the ride. This has been Signals from Pittsburgh, and we're signing off.